Oh my god, I just dropped the screws to my platen. Alrighty guys, so today's video is going to be more of an informative video for the beginner bladesmith. Now whether you're doing forging or stock removal, that's irrelevant at this point. Anyway, so if you're a beginner bladesmith, I'm going to show you some things that you can pick up on just Amazon for a relatively low price to get started in your knife making venture. I got a lot of stuff when I started out from Amazon, and it kind of helped me get started. I've kind of moved away from getting a lot of my stuff on there, but there's a lot of stuff that that is available there and easy to get and relatively cheap. So I'm going to show you some of those things. I'll link the items in the video description as well, so you guys can actually see them firsthand. But it's just going to give you a good basis of some stuff that I have or that I've tried that you can use to get started. So we're going to do 5 things. This is going to be the top 5 purchases on Amazon to get started bladesmithing. Number 5. Alright, so let's start out. Probably the most important thing that you need is going to be number 5. So number 5 is going to be what your material for your knife is, which in this case is a 12-inch bar of 1095 steel. This is available on Amazon in 12-inch sections, so super easy to get started with that. You can do stock removal right when you get it. You can forge it, whatever. That's exactly how it comes. They also have other grades of steel. I know they have 1084, and I believe they have 80CRV2, but don't quote me on that. Like I said, I will link that in the description of the video so you can actually check it out. But that's available on Amazon, readily available. Nowadays, I get my steel from a steel supplier that I've found, but I have to ship it from out of state, so it's a little bit expensive, and you want to get more steel at a time, so you're doing bigger orders. But when you first start out, if you're not wanting to spend a lot of money on the actual steel, you can get those. I believe they're like $12 and change, so it's really not that big of an investment. You're getting a good piece of steel, and there you go. That's that. Number 4. Alright, that brings me to number 4. So number 4 is again something that is going to be one of the base elements of your knife, and something that you really need to make a knife, regardless of what type of knife that you're making. So number 4 is going to be handle scales. Now I don't have any that I bought from Amazon on hand, but I can show you these. These were purchased from Amazon, and so was the bar of steel. So this is actually a Amazon based knife, let's say. The pens even were from Amazon as well. So and the epoxy. So everything that went into this blade was from Amazon, and this is a forged blade, 1095 steel. So so you can get some pretty decent scales on Amazon. They're not going to be as fancy as ones that you can buy from actual makers that make them themselves and sell direct from Instagram or whatever. That's where I get most. Excuse me. That's where I get most of my stuff now, and there is a big difference in the variety and quality that you can get, but that doesn't mean that you can't get them on Amazon. So they are available. You can also get those pens. What I do now for pens is I buy these long rods and I trim them down. I'll link those as well too, but I didn't think that those were really a list-worthy item. So that's number 4. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3. Alright, so number 3, when you look at it, you might say, well, I don't need that for knife making if I'm doing stock removal. But the fact is, it will come in very handy, and it's probably cheaper than a lot of the kilns and things that you can get for heat treating. So number 3 is going to be the forge. So this is a cheap knife making propane forge, and there's the propane, which would be separate purchase of course. But I bought this one on Amazon. It came with the refractory blanket and the stone inside and everything. It was 160 bucks, I think. I'll put that on here too. The only thing with this I will say is I did upgrade the burner on it. The burner that came with it was decent for getting started, but it wasn't a great burner. So if you watch my other video, you can see I built this. I built that out of just galvanized pipe. I soaked everything in acid to take the galvanization off, so it is basically just straight steel now. No residual zinc can be burned off of this to make me get sick or anything. So that's an important phase. If you have access to black pipe that is not galvanized, that's the way to do it. But anyway, so the forge that allows you to either forge your steel or to heat treat your steel if you're doing stock removal. So if you're doing forging, you obviously need a forge of some kind, whether that be charcoal or propane. You can make a charcoal forge for relatively cheap. You do dig a hole in the ground really and make a forge. So it's not, that's, if you want to do charcoal, that's super easy. If you want to do propane, I do recommend this. I just recommend that you also take the extra step and upgrade the burner, which for the cost you might want to look at something that's a step up from this anyway. And I'm not sure, I haven't used any others from Amazon, so I can't speak to them, but I do know that this one works. I know that the burner that it comes with is functional and works, but you have to run your propane at a much higher PSI. You burn through a little bit more propane and you don't reach the same extreme temperatures that you do with with something like this that I built. This is super easy to build too, so I wouldn't even stress that. Like if you have this comes with all these connections and stuff here for the hose and to hook up to the propane tank. So if you have this, you have all that. All you really need is these steel fittings and a couple of brass fittings right here. So not a big deal. Number 2. All right, so this brings me to number 2. Number 2 is going to be a big one. By big, I mean important, not necessarily big in stature. So it is something that's super important. Whether you're doing stock removal or you're doing forging, you're going to need one of some kind, and that is going to be a grinder. Now, let me backtrack for a second. You can hand file. You can get files and do it all by hand and stuff. But if you're a beginning bladesmith and you're getting into this, I guarantee you're not gonna want to hand file every knife that you make. You might enjoy it for the like the nostalgia of hand making something for a few of your builds and stuff. But if you're wanting to actually produce multiple knives on a regular basis and potentially sell them and whatnot, I guarantee you're gonna want a grinder. So this one right here, this is a little guy. This is a 1 inch by 30 inch grinder. This is a PowerTech, and it was very cheap, very cheap. This was right off of Amazon. It comes with a work table right here. I took it off because I don't use it for much, but it does come with one. It comes with everything you need to get started. It comes with some belts. You can buy belts readily on Amazon. If you're going to buy belts on Amazon, I recommend highly that you buy Red Label abrasives. I just prefer them. I love their edge core ceramic belts are fantastic. I'm not sure if you can get combat abrasives on there as well, but they're a really good one as well. There's a bunch of them out there. There's also just other brands on Amazon that you can get as well. But I know that Red Label was available on Amazon, and if you have the chance to do that, I would do that. I buy direct from the company site now, but I was buying all my belts straight from Amazon from them. But yeah, so this little PowerTech 1x30, it gets the job done. It's a 1/3 horsepower motor, I believe. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. So it's a small little grinder, and I really want to upgrade at some point. I want a 2x72 so I can get really more professional with it. But the 1x30 is still good to have. And especially if you're getting started out and you're just getting into this, it is not a bad thing to start with. It can be more difficult than a bigger grinder, I would say. Like, I think I would have a much easier time controlling my bevels and stuff with a bigger grinder. But this kind of, the way that I look at it, this kind of teaches you not to make mistakes, if that makes sense. Now that those are out of the way, I'm going to bring you to the most important, most super duper important thing that I've bought from Amazon as a beginner bladesmith. Number 1. Alright, so number one might not seem like the most important thing. And yes, you can do a lot of this stuff without it. And it might come as a surprise to you when I show you what this number one is going to be. But let me tell you this. The number one thing on this list has been an absolute game changer for everything that I do in the shop. It makes everything that I'm doing a million times easier, and I can't believe it took me this long to make that step and purchase this. So I'm super happy that I have it. It's so useful for so many things that's why I ranked it as number one. You might disagree with me, but I swear to you, this has made my life a million times easier, and I love it. Alright, so here's number one. Number one is this Wind bandsaw. Now this was a really cheap bandsaw. It was a very, very low price, but I cannot believe how much easier that this has made my life since I got this thing. So I use this I cut my pens with it. I cut my scales with it so I can glue up spacers and stuff. I cut my resin blocks in half, like when my wife is doing resin pour scales for me and I need to cut them in half to use them. I use it for that. So I use it a lot for scale work. I use it for trimming the scales when I put them onto the blade itself. So I'll actually profile them down to the blade. If I did more stock removal, I don't do a lot of stock removal, but I have gotten into it now. But if I did do a lot of it, this would help me profile out a piece of steel, get my rough profile in before I took it to the grinder. You can cut anything. It's awesome. It is amazing. So this is the Wind bandsaw, and I need to do another video on it. You can see I've just got this thing not that long ago, and I've already been using it so much it's full of resin and wood dust and stuff. So. But it is a really simple machine to use. The reviews on it were actually really good as well. So I was kind of shocked that such a cheap bandsaw had such good things said about it. But I see why. It is really accurate and it works really, really well if you have it adjusted correctly. And the only gripe I had about it when I first got it and opened it up is that the instructions said that it had been adjusted to the proper tension and tracking and blade tracking. But when I actually inspected it and looked at it, I found that it was not set to the proper tracking according to the guide for the saw. So it was a simple adjustment. It's all done with knobs and stuff. So I was able to just adjust it, get it back on track. It's fine. Worked great. Worked perfect right out of the box. Just absolutely amazing. Has made everything that I do so much faster, and that's why that's number one. So if you're just getting started, I hope that you take a look at this and you can take something from it. I just simply wanted a guide for those bladesmiths that are just getting started and don't have any of this stuff, to know that they can get this stuff on Amazon for relatively cheap, and it does function and work. Now, that being said, I know that you can get better stuff from other places. You can keep, if you are part of the community and you have some money to throw around, you can look for people that are getting rid of their good grinders, like a 2x48 or 2x72. That would be a better option than getting the 1x30, I would say, on the grinder part of it. You might be able to find a different forge, or you might be able to build your own forge. But for the price, and if you don't know how to do those things, and if you don't have access to those things, there's nothing wrong with buying the stuff to get started on Amazon. And once you have this stuff, you can pretty much like make anything else that you need for the process. So it's pretty cool. So these are just some basic things, and I wanted to point out too that I didn't mention an anvil. And the reason I didn't mention an anvil is because A, you don't need it for bladesmithing necessarily if you're doing stock removal, and B, I don't like the anvils that I found on Amazon, and I don't have one. So I didn't want to include anything on this list that I don't have and use on a regular basis. So that was excluded. And the reason why I don't like the anvils on Amazon as well is because they are a softer material. So when you're using them, you're going to be dinging them up. They're not going to keep a nice flat surface, and you're just going to end up having to resurface it or buy a new anvil at some point. I didn't feel like they were any kind of quality thing that I would want. Now I have my anvil that I inherited from my grandfather. It works great. It's really, really worn, but it's hard steel. It works for me. And again, it kind of presents a challenge. So I have to use that and get used to the defects in it so that I can, when I ever get a newer anvil that's not all old and worn down, I think I'll have an easier time using it. but that's that. So that's why I didn't include an anvil or like swage blocks and that kind of stuff. I felt like these tools were very basic for bladesmithing in particular, very specifically is what I'm saying. And I have tried and used all of these items from Amazon, so that is why that is the list. Alright, so that being said, as usual, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Check me out on Instagram, check me out on Patreon. You can check out my Etsy page as well, that'll be linked too. That's it. So thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.